Hi guys, so glad you can make it tonight. So this is just a bit of information about Adrian. Adrian was a member of the Brookston Area 4-H Club as well as the Cow Country Judging Club until 2011. She is also an ambassador for the South region from 2011 to 13. So the South is number one. No, we're all number one because we're 4-Hers. After finishing her Master's of Science in Animal Science at the University of Saskatchewan, she moved to Conrad, Montana, where she now works for the Montana State University as an extension agent for agriculture and 4-H. Take it away, Adrian. Thank you for coming.
Okay, let me just get my screen shared here. I usually do webinars on my work computer with two monitors, so. All right, is that looking okay? Not hearing. Okay, so like they said, my name is Adrian Good. I work for Montana State University Extension in Pondray County. I live 60 miles south of the Canadian border right now, so I'm really not that far away from you guys. I was in beef and sheep projects when I was in 4-H. And because I became such a nerd about cows and sheep when I was in 4-H, I decided to go get an animal science degree. Liked it so much, I stayed for my master's. And so now I know an obscene amount about rumens. Whoops. So today's presentation, we're going to do a bit of an introduction. We're going to go through some nutrition basics. We'll talk about rations, the animal requirements, and then you guys are going to get to practice, because it's no fun if you just sit here and listen to me all day. So first things first, we're gonna do a chat bomb. So I don't know if you guys have done these before, but what you're gonna do is you're going to open up the chat box, type in your name, where you're from, and what sheep projects you have, but do not hit enter yet. We're all gonna hit enter at the same time. So I'll give you guys a couple minutes, open up the chat box. Do not hit enter yet. Type your name, where you're from, and what sheep projects you have. So maybe you just have a market lamb, perfect. Maybe you have a pen of 3 market lambs, ewe lamb, yearling ewe. What do you have? And we'll give you 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now everyone hit enter. Woo! Look at all those chats. So we have sheep project, market lamb, breeding ewe, yearling ewe, flock, both market lambs, market. Ooh, market and carcass, that's fun. We've got ewe lamb, market and ewe lamb. Good mix. Good to see it. I like to see people doing ewes, like to see people doing carcass. Market lamb, market lamb. All right, and you're from all over the place. My goodness, great turnout. Good job for showing up. So now that I know what you all have, we're not just market lambs, we've got some ewe lambs. That will help me while we go through the presentation. So next, first question, why do we feed our sheep? You can type it in the chat, or if you really want to unmute, you can unmute. Tell me why we feed our sheep. Let me open the chat box again. Growing, okay, good answer. Why else do we feed our sheep? So they don't die, yes. So they can grow and gain weight, so they survive. Keep them alive, live and grow, stay healthy and do not die, so they survive. Stay healthy, keep up nutrition, get bigger so we can sell them, and to keep them alive, stay healthy, healthy and grow well, don't die, don't die. You'd be surprised how many people answer don't die when I ask this question. Okay, you guys are on the right track. We feed sheep for maintenance. So that's where they just keep on the right track. They're not dying. They're not losing weight. They're not gaining weight. They're just keeping on, keeping on. We feed them for growth. So especially with our market lambs and our ewe lambs and our ram lambs, we need them to grow. We don't want them to be cute little 12-pound lambs forever. We feed them so they can get pregnant and stay pregnant. They put a lot of energy into raising their babies, so we need to feed them so they can do that. And then we feed them for lactation. So that is after they've lambed They need to feed their lambs, so we need to feed them so they can feed their lambs. All right, so now I'm gonna bore you, now that you've got to have some fun. I'm gonna just throw a lot of nutrition basics at you. This is gonna be really basic overview. I could go into an hour on each of these slides, but we're not gonna do that because it's just not that exciting. It's a Thursday night. So let's jump right in. So first of all, we've got protein. So protein provides our building blocks for muscle growth, milk production, and fetal development. So your lambs need to grow, they need protein to grow their muscles. Your ewes need to make milk for their lambs. We need to feed them protein so they can make milk. Their babies inside of them need to grow, so we need to feed them a lot of protein so they can raise those lambs. Those fetuses can grow. Okay, so there's a few different ways we can look at protein. Now, all you guys really need to worry about is crude protein. So that's just all of the protein that's in the feed. So if you are looking at, say, a lamb chop, you're looking at a lamb chop and the nutrition facts on it, it'll say protein, I don't even know how many grams of protein are in a lamb chop, 14 grams of protein, that's the crude protein. So your crude protein on your feed tag is going to be the same as the protein on your nutrition label of the food that you eat. And then we can break it down a little bit more. So you don't need to worry about this, but if you're going to be a giant nerd, you sure can. So there's rumen undegradable protein versus rumen degradable protein. So when feed enters the rumen, I'm sure you all know this, the bacteria and all the microbes in the rumen break it down and ferment it, and they change it. So rumen undegradable protein will just skip past all those microbes and it'll get absorbed by the animal the exact same way it went in the mouth. But rumen degradable protein is the stuff that gets broken down in the rumen. So the lamb's rumen will break all this protein down and then it'll absorb the microbes as protein. So that's just a fun thing you can think about. There is no reason you need to formulate your rations using rumen undegradable protein and rumen degradable protein for 4-H. You can if you really want to, but you don't have to. And then finally, amino acids. So amino acids are the building blocks of proteins. You'll hear some are essential and non-essential. Non-essential means the animal makes it themselves. Essential means they need to eat it in their feed. So amino acids, they're in every protein you get. You can think of them, so I've got this little dumbbell in my Bitmoji here. So this dumbbell here is the protein, and these plates on it, they're the amino acids. So that's protein in a nutshell, and we can go into some questions at the end. I don't know why my cursor isn't showing up. That's okay. Okay, energy. Energy is the big thing we think of when feeding our animals. It provides them with what they need for everyday life: muscle development, fetal development, lactation, fat storage. Every single reason we feed our sheep needs energy. So the major sources of energy are starch and fat. So just like you eat a bag of chips, it's pretty high energy. But say a 2x4 isn't very high energy because it's a lot of fiber. So you're not going to get a lot of energy if you eat a 2x4, but you are if you're going to eat a bag of chips. Fat is also really high energy. So fat is worth about 6 times as much energy as starch is. The problem with fat is that if you get too much fat, the rumen will stop working. So we like to keep fat around that 6% range in the rumen so that the rumens can still function. So there's, just like protein, we can talk about energy in a few different ways. We have TDN and we have the net energy system. Oh, go back. So TDN, this acronym right here, is total digestible nutrients. So that is just the amount of nutrients that are digestible, that are contributing to the energy that lamb will eat. So it doesn't tell us anything about how they're used. It just says, here's the nutrients, they're being digested, they're giving the lamb energy. And that is plenty great for formulating your rations. That's what we're going to talk about later. Again, if you want to get more nerdy, get into the nitty gritty of it, there's the net energy system. So the net energy system will tell you exactly how much energy in the feed is used for growth, how much is used for maintenance, and how much is used for lactation. So you'll see feedlots, a lot of feedlots use the net energy system so they can pinpoint exactly how much energy is going towards growth of their market cattle, market lambs. Dairies use net energy because dairies need to produce milk, so they need to know how much energy is going towards milk production. So that's energy. So we've got crude protein, we've got TDN. Those are the big ones we're going to focus on, but there's another few things we need to talk about. Fiber. So ruminants absolutely need fiber or forage of some form. Their rumens do not function if they don't have fiber. They need that fiber to keep the microbes alive, keep it moving, keep it all healthy. So you should always have at least 15 to 20% fiber or forage in your diet. So your lambs should always have hay. Regardless of what else you're feeding, they need to have some form of hay. So when we talk about fiber, there's two different kinds of fiber. There's acid detergent fiber and neutral detergent fiber. So these are just, they got their names because this is how we figure it out in the lab. We put them through this fancy machine. One uses acid to figure out, and one uses a neutral solution to figure out how much fiber it is. So they both represent a few different portions of fiber. The ADF is related to digestibility. So the higher ADF you have, the lower digestibility you have. So you'll see like really bad hay, like you all know what really bad hay looks like. It's yellow, it's stemmy. It's probably going to have a pretty high ADF, and so the lambs are going to have trouble digesting it because it's just going to be tough and hard to digest. And then NDF is related to intake, so that same bad hay is probably also going to have higher neutral detergent fiber. So they're just not going to want to eat a lot of it because it's going to fill their rumen up because it's not digesting it very quickly. We have some questions rolling in here. Does silage count as forage? It does count as forage. So we'll just go back out of vitamins here. So silage is a form of forage. It works the same way hay does in the rumen. It's a little easier digestible, so it's going to have a little lower fiber, but it absolutely works. If you have silage available for your lambs, go ahead and feed it. Okay, vitamins and minerals. Now I know this is a lot of words, but there's a lot of vitamins and minerals, so we're not gonna worry too much about them. If you're feeding a mineral premix that you get from the UFA or the co-op, you're probably meeting your mineral and vitamin requirements, so you're fine. So we're gonna test my memory of chemistry. We have calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, potassium, sodium, chloride, and sulfur. These are all macro minerals, so their requirements are going to be in grams, and they are important for bones, tissues, and body fluids. So the body needs a lot of them to keep the bones healthy, keep the muscles healthy, keep all the body fluids healthy, so they're called macro minerals. And then we have chromium, cobalt, copper, iodine, iron, manganese, molybdenum, nickel, selenium, and zinc. These are microminerals, so they're just required in small amounts. So they're going to be required in parts per million. And they're really important for forming enzymes and hormones, and cobalt is really important for making vitamin B12. So if you're feeding blue salt blocks to your cows or to your ewes, this helps them make their own vitamin B12. So they're microminerals because we need them in small amounts. And then we have our vitamins, A, D, E, and K. They're fat soluble. They require fat to be absorbed. And then we have B vitamins, which are water soluble. They don't need fat to be absorbed. And we don't even need to feed them because ruminants make their own. So they make their own B vitamins in their rumen. We don't have to worry about it. But you may have heard them by their names. Biotin, choline, vitamin B12, folic acid or folate, niacin, pantothenic acid. All these, they're all B vitamins. We don't have to worry about feeding them. So vitamin C is another vitamin that ruminants make on their own, so we don't have to worry about feeding them. A fun fact is there are only 2 species that can't make their own vitamins. People, or can't make their own vitamin C, that's people and guinea pigs. Every other animal can make their own vitamin C. So we don't need to worry about feeding vitamin C to our lambs. You can if you want to, but you don't need to. Okay, so now we have ration.
Adrian, just a second, there was a couple of questions here. And the one is, if you feed salt blocks, do you need to feed mineral?
So that depends what is in your salt block. So if your salt block is just white salt, you'll need to feed some mineral too. There are some salt blocks that have some mineral mixed in, so you can get away without feeding mineral there. If you're just feeding like a blue salt block, then you should probably feed some mineral too. But if you've got a mix, you don't need to feed it.
And then there's another question, can you feed green feed to sheep?
You sure can. Green feed is, yeah, it's definitely fine. You can feed pretty much anything. Okay, great question. So Tracy, we are just about ready for the poll here. We are ready for the poll here. So I'm gonna ask you guys a question. Tracy will pop up a poll. We're gonna talk about least cost rations. Do you use a pre-mixed ration? Do you make your own? Or do you not even know what I'm talking about? So pre-mix would be if you go to UFA or co-op and buy your feed. And I always like looking at these numbers. Or if you have a feed mill that, I know a lot of people in our district when I was in 4-H used the same ration that one family had developed. So that was just a pre-mix ration. Okay, Madison, I see you asked, how can you tell? What are we asking? How can I tell what?
How can you tell if it has minerals or not?
So it'll say on the tag when you get it. So most, if they don't have a tag, then that makes a little problem. But they usually have a sticker on them. They'll say if it has cobalt or sulfur. It's generally the brown salt blocks have mineral in them.
That's probably just about everybody that's has
I
voted.
guess I am.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a little over half of you are making a premix. A couple of you don't even know what I'm talking about. Great, we're gonna learn. And 20 of you are making your own ration. That is pretty awesome. It's good to see that many. So, oh, did you all see that? Okay, oh, now my Zoom is having a panic attack. Okay. So let's talk about least cost rations. So I saw that the title that was advertised was very long and it included your parents say you're spending too much money on sheep. So that on feed. So we're going to talk about a least cost ration. So this is just a ration that will meet all of your nutritional needs of your sheep, but you're not going to spend way too much money on it. So we want them to be cost effective. We don't want to overfeed anything, because when you're overfeeding, you're either going to get your breeding stock too fat, which we don't want, or you're just going to be making really expensive poop. And that's, we don't need that. We don't want to underfeed because we need to meet our requirements. You know why we feed our sheep. We need maintenance, growth, pregnancy, and lactation. So for underfeeding, we're not making those 4 reasons that we feed our sheep. So there is one easy way, and I'm going to tell you why I'm not a huge fan of this in a minute, to develop rations, and it's called the Pearson Square. And I know this slide is very confusing to look at because it's way easier in person when we can draw it out as we go, but we'll do it the best we can. So the Pearson Square is where we take a square and we put our requirement in the middle of it. And I'm going to show you some tables where I got this requirement in a little bit here. But say our crude protein requirement is 14.5%, and we have 2 feeds available to us. Feed 1 has a crude protein of 18%, so we put it up here in the top left corner. Feed 2 has a crude protein of 9%, and we're going to put it down here in the bottom corner. So it's really important when you do this, you need 1 feed that's higher than your middle requirement number and 1 feed that's lower. So if we had a feed that was 18% and 16%, there's no way we could combine them to make 14. So you take your 18 and you subtract 14.5 and you get 3.5. So you just draw a little arrow here, 18 minus 14.5 is 3.5. And then we're going to take feed 2 our 9%, and we're going to subtract 14.5, and we're just going to ignore the negative. We're going to pretend that doesn't exist. We're going to put 5.5 up here. So we've got 18 minus 14.5 is 3.5. 9 minus 14.5 is 5.5. I just saw a question maybe, but now it's not showing up. There we go. All right, we had a feeding your heifer ration. Okay, so we have our 5.5 up here. Back. We have our 5.5 up here, our 3.5 down here. We're going to add them up to get 9. So we have 9 total parts in the ration. And we have 5.5 divided by 9 up here. So we know that feed 1 is going to be 61.1% of the ration. And then we take 3.5 divided by those 9 parts is 38.9. So that feed 2 will be 38.9%. So we keep feed 1 on the top, keep feed 2 on the bottom. We just do our math across. So then we figure out that feed 1, we need 61%, and feed 2, we need 39%. So there's a few problems with this. Slight problem. What do we do if we want to feed more than 2 feeds? We're going to have to do this a whole bunch of times in a bunch of weird different ways. Does this tell us anything about what our feed costs? No, but we can figure that out pretty easily. Does this tell us anything about what our energy is in our ration? Nope, we're completely ignoring energy. So this is a really easy way, a really simple way to formulate rations. It's a really good way to start. I don't ever use it though. There are more sophisticated ways. However, if you are not a big fan of algebra, go for the Pearson Square. And then so you can take this 61% and this 39% and say you can test them with your TDN. So what I like to do is I like to use weighted percentages. So for those of you who have ever been ready to take your final exams for the year and you have a 70 in the class and your test is worth 40% and you're trying to figure out how much you need to get on your test to pass the class, it's the same kind of math we're doing here. So it's weighted percentages. So this, we're just going to ignore this TDN column for now, but these are all the exact same numbers we took from that Pearson Square. So we're giving feed 1 at 61% and feed 2 at 38.9%. So it's providing 11% of the protein. Feed 2 is providing 3.5. So then their total protein is 14.5%, which meets their requirements. So feed 1 also had an energy, a TDN of 80, and feed 2 had a TDN of 50. So when we take that 61% and that 38.9%, we get 48.9 plus 19.5. So our total is only 68.4. We're not feeding them enough energy. So in this case, our market lambs aren't going to be growing enough because we're only giving them 68% of energy when they need 72. So I'm sure I've completely lost quite a few of you. Hopefully not. Come on. I'm going to just check the chat real quick. Okay. So we're going to make this a lot more complicated now. So this is my masterpiece. This is my Excel sheet that I use. So Excel makes everything easier. And what I have done is I have made a version of this that I can share where these are all locked and you can just put numbers in the yellow boxes. So I will send that to Tracy in the morning if you want it. So what you can do is you can put in your nutrient profiles. And then because it's in Excel, you can just kind of guess and hope for the best. So you could have taken your 61% and 38.9 for feed 1 and 2 and put them in here. And then you could have shuffled things around to see where to make it. So the nice thing about this is I have 9 ingredients in here. So I have 9 ingredients that I can choose from. And here, this ration is obviously not a good ration to feed sheep because I have 50% rolled oats and 50% peas. So we have no hay at all. and we're way overfeeding protein, or way overfeeding energy. But you can take all these and just kind of mess with the percentages and figure it out. And then this spreadsheet will even tell you exactly how much feed to feed and how much of each. I've kind of cut it off in a screenshot there, but I can send this to you guys. It is kind of, it takes a while to do it this way, especially if you're just kind of finagling, going from 50% to 50.5% to 51%. But it is a little easier than doing the Pearson Square for 9 different ingredients. But because that is so easy, not easy to build, there are computer programs. This particular one that I have screenshotted here is Cow Bites. It was made by Alberta Agriculture. I have the free version because I'm cheap, but you can pay for a version and you can add a bunch of ingredients and you can just click a button somewhere in here and it'll formulate your ration for you. There's lots of different software out there for this. If you don't like Excel, you can definitely try that out. So we're gonna pause from that. We'll check here. Ooh, didn't want to hit that button. Can you also send the protein and energy requirement sheets? Yes, I will. Is it okay to feed my sheep rolled wheat in small amounts as a treat in the evening? Sure. As long as by small amount, you don't mean like 3 pounds, because that's going to be all they're eating when they're this small. But if you're giving them handfuls of rolled wheat to get them to be your friends, absolutely do it. I'm all for making friends with your lambs. Okay. Animal requirements. So this is a big confusing chart. So this is our market lamb requirements. Everything is in pounds here except for grams. So if you like using pounds, this is perfect. If you like using kilograms, you're gonna have to do conversions. So this gives you a lot of different things. So we're just gonna break it down. Here we have lambs finishing 4 to 7 months old. So this is gonna be where most of your 4-H market lambs are. So we have their current weight. So we have 66, 88, or 110 pounds. So if they're 77, you're just gonna aim for in the middle between 66 and 88. We're gonna look at their average daily gain. So this weight change is just what they're gonna gain per day. So we have a 66-pound lamb. He's gonna gain 0.65 pounds per day. So sheep, all animals, enter or eat a rough percentage of their body weight. And when they're really little lambs like this, they're gonna be about 4.5%. Early weaned lambs are gonna be 5 up to 6% of their body weight. But around 4 to 4.5% is probably a rough estimate for your market lambs. As they get older, they're gonna decrease in their percent of body weight that they eat. But our 66-pound lamb is eating 4.4% of his body weight. So he's gonna eat about 2.9 pounds a day. So of that 2.9 pounds that he's eating, he needs 72% of it to be energy. So we have 72.4 is the requirement for energy for this lamb, which means of that 2.9 pounds, he's going to be eating 2.1 pounds of energy. Then for protein, his requirement is 14.5%, which means of that 2.9 pounds, 0.42 pounds are going to be protein. And then we also have calcium and phosphorus, vitamin A and vitamin E requirements here. And like I said earlier, if you're feeding a premixed supplement or just a loose mineral-free choice, you're probably going to meet these requirements. So you definitely are going to meet these requirements if you want to keep buying premixed feed from UFA or Co-op or wherever. But if you don't want to keep doing that, just get a vitamin or a supplement premix. You'll probably meet those requirements. So I will send these out. If you want to screenshot them, you sure can. Or I'll send out it's a 5-page document, but it's got our older ewes and rams in there too, I think. I think it came from Oklahoma, the one I got, and I really like it. So then we have our breeding ewes, the exact same thing. Their average daily gain, their dry matter intake, how much energy, how much protein they need. and all their mineral requirements. So, come on, I saw a couple of people chat. Please send the document. Is rolled barley okay to feed my sheep for their food? It sure is. We are going to go into that right now as you practice. So, the whole point of this webinar was save money on feeding your lambs, because we don't want to be spending $3 a pound on our lamb's feed, because, well, that's just insane. So you can feed sheep anything. You can feed ruminants really anything. There's a feedlot, I don't know how many of you might know, I think it's Casco feeders, maybe. They feed potato scraps from the fry plants. There are dairies out in like Wisconsin. They feed discarded Skittles that didn't make the cut for Skittles in the bag, so they get shipped to these dairies. A gal that I had gone to selections and some other things with, they found some tropical produce from somewhere in Calgary, and they've been feeding that to their cows. So you can feed literally anything. We just need to know what's in it before we feed it. There are a few things you can't feed. Obviously, if it's poisonous, please don't feed it. But if it's not poisonous, there's no reason not to feed it. So what we're gonna do here, I got a couple questions here. My friend feeds a sheep Oreos. Heck yeah. And dried leaves, yeah. Oreos are also excellent pig treats, if anyone is wondering, and marshmallows. There was one near at Provincial Heifer Show. My brother fed his heifer fries. How about Chinese food? Yeah, probably. You'd probably want to avoid any meat products, just because it is illegal to feed animal byproducts, with the exception of tallow. But nuts, sure, you can feed literally anything, as long as it's not poisonous and not an animal byproduct and not otherwise illegal. So what we're gonna do here is I'm gonna make you guys do math now. I know it's 8 o'clock on a school night, so you all wanna do math. But what we're gonna do, we have ice cream, why not? Sure, do it. We have 9 bins of feed here. I worked very hard on making these bins. So we have our Showmaster feed. So this is the premix. Why is my cursor not going? Okay, we have our Showmaster premix. It's $1 a kilogram. That's really expensive feed. So we're gonna look at other ways, other things we can feed. We've got some rolled barley. We've got some rolled oats. We've got some peas. We found some canola meal, beet pulp. And then we got a whole bunch of different kinds of hay here. We've got some alfalfa hay, some barley hay, some ditchgrass hay. So what I want you guys to do is pick 2 or 3 of these feeds and figure out a ration where you can meet these requirements. So you can do the Pearson Square if you want to. If you want to try a weighted percentage, you sure can. If you want to try the Pearson Square and then morph that into a weighted percentage, you sure can. But I'll give you, probably 5 minutes, 5-10 minutes or so. You can pick a couple feeds and see if you can make a ration. If you want to use all 9 feeds, it's going to take you a while, but you sure can. So I'll stop talking. And I'll give you, we'll say 7 minutes. Do you have to soak the beet pulp for sheep? You can if you want to, but you don't have to.
Excuse me, but I'm trying to calculate the percentages and everything. So could you tell me the website that you went on? Because there's like lots of them that are available.
For you want to know which like program I used, or
Yeah.
so I just did an Excel worksheet.
Okay.
So I didn't go on a website. I'm making you guys do hard math.
I'm struggling too, Rylan. I picked my 3 feeds.
We'll give you a couple minutes and then we'll see what we've got, or at least what feeds you want to use. If we were in person, I would have brought like 9 different treats and you can make your own trail mix, but does it have to have a hay? Yes, it does have to have a hay. You have to feed your lambs some sort of hay. All right, I'll give you guys 1 more minute.
Do we have to put in the chat after we figured it out, or put what we thought?
If you want to, you sure can. If you want to share, I'm going to ask some of you to share. So if you want to pop her in the chat, you sure can. So while we're finishing up, I'm just going to read a couple more chat here. Heard some people feed their sheep peanut butter filled pretzels as treats. Sure. So remember, I said several times you can feed literally anything, but the important thing to remember here is if you're feeding them as treats once in a while, it's fine. It's kind of like you. If I eat a cookie once in a while, it's fine. But if I make my entire diet cookies, that's not very healthy. So when you feed things, you see how I have my crude protein and energy. It's really important to get them feed tested so you know exactly what's in them. And then we have a comment. Atlantic and Tabor actually sells the leftover beet pulp to cattle producers after processing the beets. Can't see why sheep producers can purchase it as well. Yeah, that would be awesome if they could just get it straight from Atlantic. So we have Logan was feeding Showmaster feed, peas, and alfalfa hay. Logan says, heck you parents, so I'm going to spend as much money on feed as I want. Samantha says 73% alfalfa hay, 20%, 7% rolled oats. That sounds like a pretty dang good ration. I'm going to change slides here. For the rest of you, since I worked hard on this slide, what did you get? Do you have to soak the beet pulp? No, you do not. If you want to, you sure can, but you don't have to. Anyone else want to volunteer what they got? I'll show you what I got. So I did 15% ditch grass hay. I did 28% peas and 57% rolled oats. So, oh, whoops, I did under TDN. I messed up. No, I didn't. I messed up down here. Never mind. So I got that 73% TDN, so I was a little over because I believe the requirement was 72, and 14.5% crude protein. That was from a different thing that I shouldn't have screenshotted. So I got my cost per day down to 33 cents, which was about as low as I could get. So the important takeaways from today, now that I've confused you all with math. So you can feed anything you want. We got that talked about. You don't have to feed expensive show rations. You can feed anything. If you have access to pea screenings, feed pea screenings. If you have access to a whole bunch of canola, feed whole canola. You have to soak canola just because it's little tiny seeds, they need help breaking down. If you have access to potato leftovers, not leftovers, but the byproducts from making French fries, feed them. Just get them feed tested first. Feed cheap feed. You don't have to feed super fancy expensive show rations. So my first one on here is the only hill in life that I'm willing to die on. Weigh your feed. So I'm not sure if you noticed, but every slide had a weight for the feed. It didn't have 1 coffee can scoop or half a bucket or a sour cream container. It all had a weight, because when you measure by volume, like 1 coffee can, you're not actually telling anything, because I might have a coffee can that weighs 1 pound, but maybe my brother scoops feed really aggressively and his coffee can weighs 3 pounds. So if I feed in the morning and he feeds at night, our sheep aren't eating the same thing. So it's really, really, really important to weigh your feed. And I am so passionate about this that when I die, I want a memorial fund made in my name to buy 4-H kids scales to weigh their feed. This is the only hill I will die on. And utilize mineral premixes, because it's just going to make balancing for vitamins and minerals so much easier. Vitamins and minerals are really important for a lot of things. So those premixes are helpful. Don't rely just on your barley or peas or whatever to meet your mineral requirements. So with that, I am done. And I will listen to any questions if you got them. I'll try and answer them too.
So Adrian, could you show us how we could play a little more for some of us who kind of got a little lost? So for example, if we picked oats and barley hay and beet pulp to feed.
Yeah, hold on, let me open up. Oh, I do have it open. Perfect.
Just some of us are very visual and we need to be led.
Okay, what are the sources of starch and fat if you are not feeding prepared rations? Oh, that's a good. So while I'm finding my Excel sheet, the sources of starch and fat. So starch will be any grain, so like barley, oats, corn, anything that's a grain is going to be a source of starch. So fats, we don't want a whole lot of fat in our ration, but there'll be some fat in everything. But like flax, if you have flax hanging around, you can feed flax as a source of fat. I had one of my 4-H families in my office today, and they're going to be feeding black oil sunflower seeds to their goats because they can get them. That's an awesome source of fat. Yeah. And can you show the protein energy? Yes, I will show that again. So first of all, this is my spreadsheet that I have that I was playing around with. I needed to change this and I forgot to, but so in here is just all your nutrient values. So I got all these from feed tests. And then because it's so much easier to use Excel. So what were those, what were the ingredients you said you wanted? You're on mute.
You're muted, Arlene.
Help. Oats, barley, hay, and beet pulp.
Okay, so we're feeding oats, barley, hay, and beet pulp. So we're going to take the peas out of there. We're going to take the ditch grass hay out of there. I'm just going to start at 15% barley hay because we're just cranking up the energy on this thing. So I have 72%. So I need to make that 100. So I've got 11.45% protein, 75% TDN. Well, I need 14.5% protein, so that's not enough. So I can look up here and we can jack up our oats a little bit because they're a higher protein. And because we brought those up, we have to bring something down. So we can bring that up to 11.5. So you can just fiddle around. It's so much easier when you use Excel, so I will send this sheet out. So in the sheet, I'll send out, these will all be locked, so you can't change the formulas in here. So you'll just go and put your amounts that you want to feed in here. So we had one that had, what was it? Showmaster barley and alfalfa. So you can just kind of fiddle around like that. And I will go back to, I really need my dual monitors here. So here's our requirements for market lambs again. So when they're really young, they need a lot of protein because they're building all that muscle. So we need 14.5% protein. But as you get into your 110-pound lambs, you're getting closer to finishing. You can drop that protein down to 10% because they're not building muscle anymore. They're just getting fat. And here's our ewe lamb one. So if you want me to go back, I can. Weirdest food animals can eat. Oof. I don't even know the answer to that. I can't give you an answer. There's so many byproducts that are fed. Would you always feed rolled barley and oats as opposed to whole? Yes, with barley and oats, I would always roll them or crack them or process them in some form. They're just a little too small to get ground up in their teeth properly, so they won't get digested if they're not, or they won't get digested as well if they're not processed. Can we feed arrowroot cookies as a treat? Sure, why not? If your sheep like them, feed them as a treat once in a while. No questions means I've either thoroughly confused everyone or you're all geniuses now. I heard pumpkins help with worms. I have not heard that. I'm not sure how they would. Pumpkins are, yeah, I'm not sure how they would. I know pumpkins do provide some vitamins. So, okay, ruminants need the grain hull to digest properly. So, they need fiber to keep their rumens digesting things properly. So if the grain hull is on the grain, it's like, how can I make a visual? It's like a protection of all that good starch that's in the grain. So they don't get it ground up with their teeth, and the rumen breaks it up a decent amount, but it has a really hard time getting all that stuff out of there. It's like, I can't even think of a comparison right now. But as long as they have fiber, like from their hay, from grass they're grazing, from silage, green feed, their rumens will be functioning still, will still be fermenting fiber the way they're supposed to, that they really don't need the hull on the grain to provide the fiber. So that's why I say always keep at least 15% hay or fiber of forage of some form. Okay, we have Ireland grows a lot of wheat. So if I was to use wheat for my 4-H lamb, what should I add with it besides hay? I don't have my wheat nutrient. We'll probably need some sort of protein source. So if you have like peas, or even if you're just feeding alfalfa hay, you might get away with just wheat and alfalfa hay, and then a mineral or like a supplement of some form. Sheep apparently like molasses. Yes, if your sheep go off feed, mix molasses in. animals. The most, apparently there was research done, and the most popular flavor among all livestock was apple, but molasses is second. Conifer trees can deworm goats. I had not heard that either. What would I use for grain in my own ration? I am personally a big fan of barley. Corn is also pretty good, but corn can be really low in protein. Barley is kind of second in energy to corn and the highest protein of most grains, unless you're getting like a off-cast malting barley, in which case that's going to be a low protein. What is toxic to sheep? Oh my goodness. So there are a few plants that are toxic, and I am having trouble thinking. Oh, that reminds me, copper. If you feed cattle mineral to sheep, you will kill them, because cattle have a high enough copper requirement that it's toxic to sheep. So sheep need copper, but they don't need as much as cattle do, and the cattle level is toxic to sheep. You can get into some trouble with some cereal hays because they can accumulate nitrates, and those are toxic. There's some noxious weeds, like there's some milk vetches that are toxic. There are lupines are toxic, death camas. I cannot think of any of them other ones right now. That's about all I got for you for toxic. Give our sheep complete liquid molasses mineral. Yeah, molasses. Molasses is a great way to get them to eat things. Are there any certain vegetables toxic? Not that I know of. No, I'm pretty, I'll check into that to make sure, but, and I'll send a big list of things to Tracy in the morning. I'll check into that to make sure, but I don't think there are any vegetables that are toxic. Is poison ivy? Probably not. Sheep are poison ivy is just like itchy. Sheep love to eat stinging nettle. Is it good for them to digest? Yeah, we had one ewe who we put her in a new pasture. She would go straight for the Canada thistle, like drawn to it. She loved it. It's fine as long as they're not getting like sore mouths or anything. It's fine. Rhubarb leaves, no, they're toxic to human. Yeah, oxalic acid, so they'll be toxic to sheep too. Sweet pea vines. I don't know about sweet pea vines. Clover. I don't think clover is. There is one that is related to clover that I'm going to look up for you guys. Can you feed grass clippings? Sure. I mean, grass clippings are essentially hay. Just make sure you don't have any weeds in them. There are some random weeds that I didn't name that are toxic, so just make sure you don't have a lot of weeds in them. Dandelions are fine though. Families, goats enjoy conifer trees. Yeah, goats are weird and like trees, but our sheep also used to eat caraganas, so. The fun thing about sheep and goats is they are browsers, so while cows like just hanging out and eating the grass, sheep and goats are looking for the high energy stuff. So they're gonna go eat trees and leaves and things. Oh, thank you, Rylan. Toxic plants, tansy, ragwort, American or Japanese yew, oak, rhododendron, nightshades, milkweed. Yes, milkweed, that's the big one I was thinking of. Lupine, sheep laurel, willow trees. I don't think so. Yeah. Milkweed is fun because it is a very nasty weed, but it's also, a lot of people like to plant it because it's monarch butterfly food. So there's a fun fight between farmers and people who like butterflies. All right, I will check on these toxic plants, aside from the ones that Rylan gave us. All right, well, I see no more questions. It only takes one nightshade berry to kill a child. That's a fun fact. Oh, yep. You guys want to unmute yourself? You can ask a question.
Are willow trees toxic to sheep?
I'm not sure if they are. I'm going to check on that one. I don't think they are, but I don't want to tell you yes and then have a bunch of your sheep die, or no. So I'm going to check on that one too.
Because last year my sheep absolutely loved the willow tree leaves in our pasture.
Did she die? And I don't think they're toxic. I'll check though, just to be sure. All right. Thank you guys for listening to me.